Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Covenant Cast. I'm Zach.
And I'm Steven.
And I'm Jonathan.
And today we're talking about Star Wars Destiny, After Empire at War. Before we dive into Destiny, tell me what you've been up to this week. I'm looking right at you,
all right,
John.
thanks for clarifying.
Why don't you
So this week, I've been incredibly busy. Very high levels of stress. So basically,
why are you so stressed? Why are you so busy?
Well, basically,
we're gonna crack it down right here.
Two things happened.
Yeah.
One, my probably biggest and favorite client came to me and said, "OMG, we've got a problem." For my freelance, I do freelance on the side also as well.
I was gonna say, hopefully we're your friends.
And then they came and they said that they needed help, and so I helped them. But because of the situation they were in, the deadline was very tight. And it was something like 8, maybe 10 hours of video. So, I mean, if you want to break that down, that's 5 feature films that need to be edited in a week and a half.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah, the CGI on these things is incredible
amazing,
too.
Yeah,
amazing.
all the shots, all the actors.
But I mean, you want to talk about how much is getting put out. That's what I talk to Ben about sometimes when he's like, "Oh my gosh, this L5R video is taking so long." It's like, well, you're basically editing a feature film. I mean, you have 2 shots to choose from, but
basically
nothing.
That's what I'm saying.
Screen,
Basically,
yeah.
not only that, but also summer came right on back. So we had the crazy deadline. Summer came right
Which
on
you
back,
hate.
which I hate, and I'm working in a room in my house that actually isn't air conditioned very well. So heat plus that equals stress. However, last night the temperature cooled down, and I got to the point in the project where I got to work in After Effects, and I worked in After Effects for about 5 hours last night.
Which you love.
And it was lovely. I love that program so much. I've been missing it. It's fantastic. So I think I'm around the corner on that. I'm feeling tired, but also
It's supposed to cool down further,
elevated.
too.
Yeah, because honestly, and this is what I was actually talking to my mother about, of all things, is that as stressed as I am, as unpleasant as it makes me for those around me, the sad thing is that I enjoy it. That I enjoy descending into chaos and then coming back a better person. I mean, that's right. That's what every story about humanity is about. Where you have someone who is in a state of order, they just send them down into chaos, and they come back, and hopefully a better person that has changed the world. I'll do it ad nauseum.
I feel like, though, you make that your daily story.
Well,
when it's not ever meant to be. It's like you wake up, you go to work, the dark place.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong with that. Yeah,
but you come out a better person, so work is great, eh? Work is the best.
That's I like to struggle. I really enjoy struggling because I enjoy the feeling of getting to the goal line on that. So the goal line is near, and one more battle won. So that's always, it's good. It's not fun while it's happening, but it's nice to look back on it and say, well, I was challenged and
congratulations.
I rose to it. Yeah.
I'm glad that you're becoming a better you.
That's the goal.
In the meantime, tell me about your struggle, Steven.
We're very different. We have different approaches. My
you like to never be struggling.
My idea is to be as even keeled and balanced as possible. And honestly, it comes from the old school kind of Alan Watts not buying into your story. So we're entirely opposite. It's like that's all a complete fiction. So like all of the stress and drama of that, if there is no self, then what are you gonna do about it? But on that front, I've been doing a lot. I played the Emotionalism album from the Avett Brothers. I had a friend of mine with a guitar. I played the mandolin, and we learned the album over the past month in anticipation of fall weather. As Jonathan mentioned, it has turned on our part of the world, and played that for a crowd of about 8 to 10 close friends, and that was really fun. That's something I hadn't really done that before, and it's nice. It's like exercise in the sense that if you don't have an objective, it's hard to stay motivated. So like when I was training for a half marathon, it was very easy to go run every day because I was thinking I'm going to be so gassed during this half marathon if I don't get out and get in shape. Whereas if there's no half marathon in the future that you have to prepare for, it's a lot harder to convince yourself to go exercise. Similarly, if you have an event that you're going to perform at musically, it's a lot easier to practice that music.
Because you're going to be out in front of a bunch of people.
You don't want to embarrass yourself, right? So that was fun. And Avett Brothers, incredible band. and I have to give the disclaimer of their old albums in particular, even though that
one of
is
those guys.
just, yeah, sorry for being that exact person.
Now we can get into the philosophical implications of Steven's journey and the fact that he's training for something versus my journey, but we'll say that for later. I think that's the thing that'd be interesting.
Who is
to break
Steven?
down.
I mean,
That's
I'm basically Jim
87.
Carrey over here. You heard about Jim Carrey going?
Yeah,
going.
he got deep into Eckhart.
The thing is, he's not going crazy. That is a genuine philosophical approach. I'm not saying I haven't studied it enough to know where he's
Yeah, I can't
at.
tell the validity of his claims, but yeah,
But
it's the Eckhart destruction of self.
May he be on a path to enlightenment?
Maybe. I mean, everybody is, right? Or already is, and you just don't know it. But
Yeah, there's no path, Zach.
there's no path. The moment you think there's a path, you're struggling again. So think about LCGs is another big part of what's been going on. And actually, something hit me. Something hit me really hard.
Are you
And
bruised or anything?
it revolves around. Yeah, sometimes it just goes.
I'm going to be lucky to get out of here.
It's actually, there's a question that hit at the perfect time from Sterling Shelley on YouTube. And this is something I was thinking about all weekend. And so it was kind of this, crazy happenstance, destiny, if you will.
Sterling with the call it at the beginning
Got
of the show.
title. Should Netrunner be, essentially, should Netrunner be story-driven, similar to how L5R is? And the thing I've been thinking about since our last podcast with Netrunner and like the reboot and how this all might go, why it's right in front of us, a living card game. How is it not revolving around that entire concept?
The living
theme-based, evolution of all of the characters, cards, concepts, etc. through infinite time. Like, why is that not? It should be. That's the whole model. Like that's the model, right? That should be it.
I'll tell you why. It's because they haven't really forcefully gone after rotation. Because if you have something rotating out, you can then drive it into the story, and it's like, oh well,
You can then live it.
Wizard died,
Like
right?
with Gabe
Or a wizard
getting
got
old.
old, and here's the old version.
Yeah, here's the old version.
Well,
That's got to happen.
I'll tell you actually why.
That has to be it.
Let me tell you
I
actually
like the
why.
idea.
Uh-oh, no.
Oh no! Here comes reason and logic. No, because it's really freaking hard.
Yeah.
To really drive a story and have card development based on things that are happening in the game and the things that are happening within the community. I mean, it is maybe after L5R we will see it more often, but I feel like it is a much more difficult process.
Well, like doing great work isn't easy, right?
I get it.
Like, I don't think we should be scared of like, oh, we might have to hire a couple of people to do this right. You know what I mean? Like, well, let's do it.
But what you see in the history of time, with LCGs at least, is
Going all the way back.
yeah. Let's go back right to Thrones. And this is not Destiny related at all. But the first Thrones and the first Arkham game, I don't remember what it's called. Call of Cthulhu. I do remember. I called it right back. They came out right. They were reasonably successful. Thrones, the LCG saved Thrones, the game that was a CCG that was going to go away because there wasn't enough fan base around it to keep that model going. And then the next thing they do is, and technically there's some steps in here I'm not talking about, but the next big thing is Netrunner, which was tremendously successful and way more successful than they could have possibly imagined. And that's back when they didn't even have an organized play department, let alone any of this kind of stuff. And then you fast forward, you get Star Wars LCG, you get Conquest, you get, I don't want to miss any here, there's Lord of the Rings in there somewhere, there's Arkham.
Don't start.
But
It's like
anyways,
naming people at the wedding.
anyways, the reality to me is that then you get the next step, which is L5R. And so they have upped the ante again and said,
Well, but would L5R have evolved to this point without the history of L5R being story-driven?
that's irrelevant.
Right?
Because it happened, right?
It
so,
did happen,
So I
but-
don't think you could have done it. I don't think they could have done L5R like this in 2012 when they did Netrunner.
Are you saying they didn't have the experience?
I don't
to do
know
it?
that there was the experience. I don't know there was the resources. I don't know there was the time. Because I even just the organized play half of L5R is time intensive enough that they barely had time to do what they were doing, and that was Martell patches. the legendary. I need to get some of those. I need to find them and buy them
That
on
does
eBay.
beg the question. They do now have the time and the resources and potentially a little bit of the experience with the beginning of writing L5R. So why not approach these living card games and instead of rotations have them be time periods?
Well, let's get to the
How
concept.
can we make it feel alive? That's the only question I want answered.
And just from a meta level outside perspective, I think that if you look at the timeline, right, like the story, it's like you would consider not just investing all this time resources and doing this in all of your games before you've maybe done it once.
Tried it with Elva
and then see how that gets responded to. But anyways, I mean, I do think it's
going to be a test case.
A lot of variables though there too, because that's anyway. But let's get into destination or whatever. Hey, you actually got some.
I had a really not insane weekend, but girlfriend's birthday was this weekend. Went two-stepping, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a form of dance here in Oklahoma. I don't know. It's probably in Texas too.
Yeah, they have. They probably call it Texas two-step down there.
Yeah, they take bigger steps. Anyways, I love Texas. By the way, I'm a big Dallas Cowboys fan. So if you're from Texas, don't take that personally. But the funny thing to me is, I was historically been nervous about the whole dancing thing, and in recent years have, become much more into the whole idea. But got there, and it was so funny because my girlfriend and her friends were there looking at a guy dancing. They're like, oh my goodness, I want to dance with him. He's so good at this. And all I see is someone walking across the dance floor. And I'm like,
it's two-step. It's literally right, left, right, left.
That's right, left.
Two forward, one back.
Anyways, and then I realized I was going to have a great time, and I was going to look awesome. Because I'll tell you what, of all the things I've learned in my whole life, walking is one. So I was ready. And the second thing I did.
Did it go well? I mean, did you walk
it went
on?
Great. Yeah.
Everybody was happy?
She was so surprised. She was like, I didn't know if it was like, because apparently she's danced with people that aren't good at it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, can you walk to the beat and make sure you don't step on anyone's toes? Or, because if you're leading, you don't want to run into anybody.
Yeah.
But they're not looking.
It's
all on you. So that's really where the
And did you twirl? Did you do any twirling?
Light twirling.
Started learning twirling is where it starts to really elevate.
And the non-just walkers, there are some skill happening. Yeah. But, there you go. I also lost my mic. I'm going to let you guys talk while I'm doing that.
The one question that I had, actually, we can keep going, this is fine. The one question that I had was whether or not you are now opened up to further dance possibilities.
Three-stepping?
Three-stepping? Four, even five?
Even five-stepping.
Jonathan and I grew up, going to ska shows and skanking and punk shows and that kind of a thing. And we cut our teeth on just really learning not to care about anyone around you.
Culture of
so are you now ready for that? I mean, are we ready for express, Zach?
Yeah, success breeds confidence.
I think I'm going to take it one step.
You don't want to take it two steps?
I saw that one coming down the highway.
Not ready. Let's take a step towards destiny and get into this, shall we? One note real quick, and I'm going to be honest. To anyone listening or watching, just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for listening. We're on episode 30 here, and we recently have crossed 100,000 audio downloads. We're well over 100,000 views on YouTube.
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
We love it.
And very, very appreciative. The fact that there are people out there that want to watch and or listen to what we have to say. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say this has honestly gone better than we had hoped for whenever we started the podcast.
I don't know. I was pretty optimistic.
Yeah, well. Speak for yourself.
So not true. Also, we would always appreciate it if anybody listening would leave a review on iTunes, especially.
That helps.
That actually helps us rank whenever people are looking for stuff. That will shoot us up to the top of you might like this podcast list. So if you actually think this is worth listening to, which my presumption is that if you're listening, that would be the case, then that's really helpful. So that would be a cool thing to celebrate too, some reviews on the podcast.
Yeah,
that'd be nice.
That would be very nice. So first episode, I think, was titled something along the lines of...
The very first.
Is Destiny Dead? Or something like that.
Boy, we got off to a rip-roaring start.
We took some heat. People were calling it clickbait, which I just wholesale agree with, but that's neither here nor there. So, made sense to revisit Destiny.
It was the topic. I mean, it wasn't. We didn't say you won't believe these 10 things that Destiny's about to do or something like that.
I feel like the thing about clickbait is that inherently the goal is to get you to click.
Right.
Which is true of a good title.
Of everything that you should be doing as a business.
The other part of that is that typically clickbait is they somehow make money off of the click, right? They get you to view an ad, or it's like the 10 things and there's a different page.
There's a slideshow. Can you believe those slideshows?
Immediately out.
People get into that. People actually do that. The second I see a slideshow, oh my goodness.
That's from this back
Furious.
in my favorite Dig.
I think similar is the quiz that people get into those quizzes and it's get to the end, it's like, you have to give us your email address to get your result. It's like,
no way.
Nope. Get out of here.
That wasn't a part of the deal.
That's what the fake emails are for. Anyways.
And quit popping stuff up. I'm I'm so tired.
The popping
stuff up. I can guarantee you, all Team Covenant fans who are going to go to our website or who are in our website, who plan to be on our website, unless the landscape changes dramatically and devices are in such a way that it's handled differently, there will not ever be this pop-up nonsense.
Not for newsletter sign up.
All of a sudden, look. No, none of that.
I thought our new credit card processor was a pop-up.
No. Okay. The modal stuff is fine. If you click checkout and it pops up the checkout page.
That is different than scrolling down a page.
That's different than
you can't see what you were seeing.
Scrolling down and all of a sudden you're like, your screen like fades out and it's like good exclusive offers.
Well, and then it's like you gotta wait 10 seconds, hit the X.
As soon as I can find it.
And then the ones that are like, they put the X in a way where it's like hard to click, and you actually click the ad and then they make 3 cents and I just click
off the window.
So
no way.
Back to Destiny, which is
one of those shit.
Well, is it dead or what?
Is it dead? I mean, we made a lot of cases back 30 weeks ago, roughly, about the game, and the game had just recently, I guess, been out. Or what was 30 weeks ago? It was like before the second set.
It was well after all the supply issues.
Basically.
I got in trouble for saying belly aching. I remember that exclusively.
Trouble? Who?
There was just a lot of, how dare you, talk about people in terms of belly aching.
I think one of the biggest things at the time is there was a lot of angst or a lot of frustration at I can't get product, I want product, I can't play the game because I can't get the stuff.
And a lot of people were worried about being left behind as their friends had already had product, they didn't get a chance, they liked it now, and they couldn't find it.
Right.
So I guess question one is how is supply? And where are we at? We're 3 sets in. We have another starter that came out, the 2-player starter. And seemingly we have the 3rd set just came out, Empire at War. And from everything I can tell and see, there's plenty of supply.
There's not a single supply issue.
I gotta say, I walk out into the store and I actually see stuff on the shelves, which has not been the case.
Product is in there. Now, here's the question though, it's possible to overcorrect on a collectible game, right? It's so possible that they might, let's say they end up with 16,000 boxes in the warehouse, it might be the best thing to just burn them, right? That's the crazy thing about collectible games is there are stories about destroying product just to maintain some level of, rarity or collectability to this kind of stuff. I don't know if that's the case. I presume that there's not a bonfire going on over at FFG right now. But there is, it's always this kind of back and forth of trying to anticipate demand and what are your levels of printing that you can do, right? Because maybe your only choice is we can either double it or keep it where it is, right? So then you have to make the choice, if we have a few more players than the current supply, doubling it maybe doesn't make sense because now you're getting into the fact that there's too much supply. So it's a lot of, I do not envy the decision makers on that front.
Right.
That's kind of a hold your pants kind of situation that is always capable of going a little bit sideways.
One thing we've talked quite a bit about on the show is the product life cycle of a game, which is game comes out, excitement's high, it sells out, they print more, it sells out, you get a whole bunch of new players in. There's very little product, so it's easy to buy in. And then at some point after the game comes out, you kind of plateau, which is and we talked about I think it was the Why Games Fail podcast, which is you suddenly start losing. Because there's a natural attrition to a game, right? People get uninterested. People decide it's not the game they thought it was going to be. People move on to the next thing. People go to whatever. There's a million reasons why someone gets out. But there's a natural attrition rate, effectively, of people leaving a game. And early on in a game, a lot of times, you're adding people faster than that rate.
Well, I hope so.
So, yeah.
That would be a disaster.
The plateau, effectively, is when that rate is equal, which is people are getting out, but the people are buying their collection. And you just are kind of staying at the same thing. And then, we highlighted in that Why Games Fail podcast, when that math switches, when you start losing people faster than you're adding people, is when it becomes question marks. And so with Destiny, I mean, the couple of questions for me are where are we at in the product life cycle of Destiny? That's a good consideration. And then also, because if what happened is the spike is happening and supply is here, so there's a bunch of people not getting it.
For those listening at home, the supply is here was lower than the number of players by about a hand chop.
By a hand chop. I'm gonna do
roughly one. I'm
gonna do fake numbers, right? Let's say original supply was 10. 10 units of whatever.
10 units.
Hold on.
All right. And then
I used to do academic bowling.
It's really simple. 10 units, and then demand was actually 15 units.
15.
Okay. So there's this oh my gosh, I can't get any product. everyone's freaking out, right?
Okay.
That's the difference of 5 units.
Now, if we put those units on a train to Clarksville
at 2:30 p.m.
At 2:30 p.m. Yeah, 42 miles.
No, but really, the part of the problem with making that guess is, as FFG or whoever's making that call, you don't know what the actual demand was.
Right.
But the other problem is you're not trying to guess what demand for that was. You're trying to guess what's demand of Empire at War going to be 9 months from now. Because if the truth is, demand here is 15, but because 5 of these people can't get the product, let's say half of them are just like, all right, I'm out. They're not shit all. Now you're down to 12.5. All right? And then what if of the 10 units that were originally the people that actually bought the stuff, you have another 2.5 of people
that just didn't like it.
Who were like, well, this game really wasn't, it was a new game and I'm not into it anymore. Now you're back down to 10.
Ooh.
But then you went ahead and ordered 20 units.
Yeah.
Well, now you got a problem.
Now you need to find some new players.
Now you need to find some new players.
Well, and let's not forget, the other caveat here is that this 10 units that was exceeded by 15 also got a reprint.
Yeah.
Let's not forget Awakenings was reprinted to accommodate that lack. So that worked, right? I mean, at least it seems like everybody eventually got the Awakenings that wanted it, that hadn't been run off by the delay. So those that were willing to stick around did get the cards that they wanted. Empire at War was relatively painless. I mean, there was a couple of moments of like,
it was mostly card-based.
Can't get boxes, and Empire at War had some issues.
We'll get to that in a minute. But this is Empire at War. I believe it's still purchasable.
Yeah.
On like a distribution chain level. So used to the first 2 sets.
Not Empire at War, Spirit of Rebellion. Sorry.
Yeah,
that's right.
So Empire at War, though, I think is still purchasable.
Yeah.
Not just from retailers, but up the chain. And compared to the first 2 sets, it would be like wave 1 comes, it's gone. Wave 2 comes, it's gone. And the Spirit, they actually had a 3rd wave. In which case, I'm not sure if those are still available or not. But general supply of Spirit seems good.
Fine.
And, my fake math just illustrates the difficulty in projecting. Because you got to really think about that product life cycle.
Yeah.
And it's like, where are you at? And then, demand could have been 50 units. And it's like, even if you make 20, you might have been in the same exact problem. Which is...
These are hard choices.
You're way under. But it seems like... and just the general sense I get from the fact that you can still buy it, that they have made enough Empire at War.
Certainly they have made enough. There is not a shortage of Empire at War. Not at all. I agree with that 100%.
So with not even a year later, 3 sets in, they have seemingly corrected the supply issue problem. Right. So I don't think that's a problem anymore. I think if you want product, you can find it. There's plenty of people with collections that are selling it. Plenty of people are buying it. There's eBay auctions. There's local stores. There's online outlets. There's the whole kit and caboodle. Which then brings us, when we're talking about a game, and we haven't really talked about where is Destiny in its life cycle, but there's the next question of, well, how is the game going? Right? Now that supply isn't as forefront on the concern, the actual game itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and worth noting too, we got the 2-player starter, right? So I think that was a tremendous product, just because, as you talked about with LCGs a lot, we're looking at the churn and new players getting in versus old players getting out. That's an amazing entry point to the game. So I think that, especially come Christmas time, there's going to be a significant boost in players coming into Destiny because they're going to get that box for Christmas from friends or from family or whatever it is. So
and
that's a good thing. And there's a new movie coming out. So all of this is going to spiral. So I think we're going to see big boom cycles of Star Wars towards the end of the year with Christmas and movie releases. And then we're going to basically try to sustain that. If I was FFG, I would try to sustain that until the next one at the end of the next year.
And in this 30-week period, not only the 2-player starter, which I agree, I think that's an incredible product. The starters were also out of print, and they come back in print. And the starters really weren't the best starters I've ever seen. But the 2-player starter, I'm very comfortable saying, is a fantastic product. If you buy 2 of them, I think you can build 2 really good decks that you could actually go to a local event with and whatever.
Crazy good.
Yeah, but then the other truth is that we also had store championship season.
Yep.
And there were a ton of store championships. I mean, more than I've ever seen for any FFG game. And the vast majority of them had 30-plus players. Like, just consistently hitting big numbers. I saw some with 12 or 15 out in, like, Wyoming.
You'll always have, like, your 4, your 6, your 8s. That's fine.
So, general community seems pretty involved. We're going to head into the new Star Wars movie in December. We're going to head into regional season in November, December. We had the first World Championship, obviously. We had Gen Con Nationals. I think a couple hundred players were playing in that. I think it was actually close to 300. So all those signs seem good.
Yeah.
The real consideration for me, and I can probably wax.
I'd like for you to get waxed because I'm I'm basically at a state with Destiny where after Worlds in May, I have a secondary interest in Destiny. Play it every now and again, draft it when we do drafts, but haven't really committed the level of like zealotry in terms of training and learning the game and seeing where things are and that kind of stuff. So kept an eye on the cards and looked at everything and noticed stuff. I've been seeing the popular decks that have been rolling through, the Thrawn Unkar, that kind of stuff. And then probably we'll do the same thing, like starting in February of next year, we'll start to work up to maybe competing at Worlds again.
Sure.
Or doing like a regional or something.
You were even talking about, you having an end goal to train for is part of what motivates
That's
you.
true.
And so after Worlds, it was like, regionals aren't even until November, December. So like, I'm going to go enjoy the summer. I'll be back.
Yeah, for sure.
But I continue playing.
But you've been going at it pretty well.
Yeah.
So you should be the one waxing on this.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get there. Empire War came out. I think the general state of the game is you actually wrote a blog about action chaining, cheating
a long time
at
ago.
some
Here we
point.
go,
Right?
yeah.
I like to hope that has. I wish it hadn't borne out so directly as predicted in there, but I think that is still a huge concern for me. I don't think it has gotten. I think it's gotten significantly worse. I think it is continuing to be the number one design flaw of the entire game, honestly.
Yes.
And it wasn't everybody, like if you're disagreeing with that, you should really go read the blog, because I'm not interested in throwing gasoline on a fire and just saying I don't like it. I genuinely think that from a design level, the game is at its most exciting when you have the most interaction between players. A number of game designers would agree that interaction between players is the bread and butter of a thrilling gaming experience, right? So if you're trading an action for an action, literally the smallest unit of interaction possible in the game, over and over and over again, the more you can trade those actions, the more interaction you're going to have, the more interesting the games are going to get. So I genuinely think that whenever you take 5 chunk, action blocks, you're removing 5 potential actions from your opponent. So you have just made the game less interactive. And so it's more of a conceptual argument more than it is. Whether or not I like the concept doesn't really matter, right? It's fun to action chain, and like I did it at Worlds, and it's cool. But fundamentally, I do think that there is a flaw there, deep down.
I think to touch concepts we've hit in a lot of our episodes of the podcast is the idea of what is the essence of a game, right? And so for me, I had a pretty knockdown, drag-out conversation in the store the other day about this very topic, about Destiny, which is early on when we first started playing, it was very much I take an action, you take an action.
Kind of, right? I mean, it was,
Like
especially
early. I'm saying early.
Yeah.
But there was still Ray there the whole time.
Then I just went
Figured
into
it out,
But
yeah.
but early on, right, it'd be like Elite Vader and a Stormtrooper, or name any pairing here, right?
Django felt so busted.
Django did.
He could action
and
cheat
we,
so hard.
we learned how to deal with Django. But the thing for me is that if you took away all of the action cheating, I don't think I would like Destiny any less. So I'm coming from this perspective where the essence of Destiny to me is 100% based around the you take an action, I take an action.
Yeah.
The tenseness of me rolling out and I hit the damage, and I look at your face,
Do you have it?
and you see that I rolled the damage, and do you have it or not? Am I
Yeah.
going to get to resolve this or not? And that level of going back and forth is the most fun I have when I'm playing Destiny. Now, there's a philosophical argument that I have heard, and I understand, yet I disagree with, which is the idea that without any action chaining, I'm going to call it action chaining,
More positive
more
connotation.
positive, yeah, without any action chaining whatsoever, control inherently becomes way more consistent.
Too good.
In that if I have control and I have resources in the cards to play the control cards, if I know it is going to work, then you do end up with a different game, because I think you end up with more control cards in the deck. I think you end up with people playing less upgrades onto characters and more sitting with resources waiting.
Is it? Yeah, that's a teeter-totter though, isn't it? Because the more upgrades I play, the less control you can use on me.
That is the balance. That's the game I like.
Yeah.
Right? Coming from a control player that...
Try to control 9 dice whenever I get
That
all
was
my
the trick,
upgrades
right?
out,
Used to, you had to build your board to a point where they couldn't control it. And then, it's the balance of, well, do I save money for control? Because I know it's going to work or not. But,
You're so right, actually.
yeah.
That's correct. Because I remember that in those early days, the decisions that I was so pleased with was whether or not I should take this 2 to 3 damage or play this 2-cost upgrade. Mm-hmm. Like that's a classic
you're having to
decision
make, right?
that I would love.
But with
to
action
keep
chaining,
making.
you just don't have to make it. Now,
No.
I will say I've not, as someone who played Hanrei, more really because I just thought it was unquestionably the best deck in the game at the time. Mm-hmm. Right now, after seeing Empire War, and we're still pretty early, so I don't want to pull the like Django Veers happened, and originally the community was just like,
whoa,
this is too good, right? It does too much damage too consistently. And then it was like, well, actually, wait a second. Like, if we think about this,
it's just the spoiler.
And we learn how to play a little stronger against this, then we can beat it. And I actually felt the exact same way about Pomaz. I will spoiler alert. I don't like Maz. I wish he would disappear.
Yeah.
Not the character. The character in the story is fine, but in the game, I hate that. I can't tell you how much I hate it. But and we'll get back to Maz.
Action chaining strikes again.
But the reality of like Pomaz is I felt like people just weren't playing around it. Like it's like this they
were throwing their hands up basically.
But there were 1,000 treatises on why you couldn't play around it, or why even you playing around it would not be sufficient to consistently beat it, or about how if you played around Pomaz you couldn't beat anything else. I mean, there were multiple like articles and people laying this argument out,
and I actually even contributed to that. I wrote a "Is Pomaz Broken?" treatise. I don't think it's broken, right? Anyways, all that to say, to me, the action chaining that's now in the game is Ray's not even the worst offender anymore. She's the one that lets you take like 6 actions in a row and like, okay, maybe I spend all my cards and I play the stuff and like, gotcha. But at least you're having to spend the cards, right? The cards that are now blowing me away are in the new set, which is Sabine and Cad Bane. And they have very similar abilities. Sabine, after you activate her, you can play an upgrade from your discard pile onto her. And I'm not talking about the Sabine combo thing.
Yeah.
But you play the upgrade, and then you've activated her, so you're rolling these in. But if you play an ambush upgrade from your discard pile, you immediately get another action.
Right.
Cad Bane has an action where you can play an upgrade on him and then activate him in a single action.
So you play the ambush.
So again, if it's ambush, he can roll in and resolve. And the problem with those two characters is that they have 2 and 3 sides of damage. So on Saturday, and I know the odds are bad, right? But I had 4 games in a row against Sabine or Cad in which I would have my opponent somewhere between 1 and 4 health left against one of my characters. They would have 1 or 2 health left on these characters. They take an action, they roll in, they hit 9 or 10 damage, they win the game.
Yeah.
Straight out. And the reality of just like we played this multiple turn game to get to a point where you play an ambush upgrade, roll in, you hit the 2 3s, you resolve the damage, and it's game over.
It doesn't feel right, yeah?
I just don't... I don't like it at all. Mm-hmm. And this is coming from the perspective, and this is why like I don't think Ray is a problem, is that there are decks that just like you run like a 2-character Ray deck, and Ray Sabine is one of these decks that you could run. Hey, that makes sense. Pair them together, and then anyways. But the thing about it is like what is happening to the game because of these characters. I think action chaining has. I'm in favor of none action cheating. But if you're going to have some, there are cards like, to me, Tactical Mastery. You spend a card, you spend a resource, and then you get 2 actions. There's no grabbing an upgrade from your discard pile. There's none of that stuff. No Ray, no chain. It's like you have got to spend these things to make this happen, and you have to spot a red character. So there's like lots of conditions. That's like the most acceptable to me.
All right, so let me lay this on you. So first of all, the other side of Empire War specifically, not talking about kind of the perennial problem that Destiny might have, according to a couple of us, which is by no means the be-all, end-all opinion, but that everybody seems extremely pleased with the diversity of the field after Empire at War.
I've heard nothing.
I've seen so much feedback about like all the crazy decks that we can run. I feel like it's wide open. The set is incredible. So there seems to be a lot of great things happening with Empire at War that, aside from the whether or not you agree with action chaining, is a great sign for development of the game, design of the game, those kinds of things. This is Jeremy's first crack, I think, at contributing to the set.
I think he worked on this and the 2-player starter.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, we see a lot of, I love the number of fundamental cards in here. Like, aside from things that are breaking the fundamentals, like Vibra Knife, a lot of shield tech going on here, a lot of ways to use them, a lot of ways of looking at, well, if a character has 6 damage, do this thing, you can hurt yourself to do that thing. We got our first surge card in the game, which is I'm questionable on, but I think if you're going to do it, that's probably the best way to do it. But yeah, aside from that, aside from the action chaining, it seems like it's a giant positive thing, and I wonder if the entire problem with all of this just is ambush, right?
Just the keyword ambush.
Where is the ambush upgrade not involved in everything that we've been talking about?
Nowhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Nowhere. So why don't we change it? Why don't we just redefine ambush as you can resolve a die after you play the card?
Or you can activate a character.
Or you can activating character is a little bit weird because then you have like a Cad Bane. You can activate Cad Bane, but if you play ambush, you can activate him again, but that doesn't, it would just not work. I'd rather it just be like, encourage people getting dice on the board, and then ambush is, oh, I resolved a die and you didn't think that I'd be able to. Like, that feels like ambush. Or give somebody a shield. It doesn't matter what it is, but it seems like just the baseline ambush wording is what is creating all of the problems.
That's fair. I mean, that's a potential
just
silver bullet.
Or just get rid of it on everything.
I could actually almost see the ambush working like Nines does, which is when you play this, you roll this upgrade in, and then you can resolve it.
There you go.
Because you're ambushing that thing. Because obviously it gets out of control. With Han Rey, it was like, I have 12 dice on the board, and now I kill you. And you didn't, I had those games at Worlds. It'd be like, I take 5 actions before you go, and I finish the game.
I gotta tell you, it does not feel like an ambush when your opponent does 7 things in a row.
That's more like
it's like
assault.
That's a well laid out plan that is now happening in front of you, and you're just sitting there frozen. Right?
So I think that's, if I were given, and again, I think, like you were saying, the set as a whole, like when we drafted earlier, which we're going to talk about a little bit, the cards that are coming out, I literally have 10 decks built right now. And they're all different and with different characters. And it's the kind of thing where I feel like we finally hit mass, where there's enough character pairings and enough cards that like even the same character pairings, the deck doesn't have to be the same, which is cool. But at the same time, from a strictly like, if I'm considering the top tier of decks, I think the way it'll shake out, and we'll see. I could be totally wrong. And that's what I'm saying.
Now you're on the record.
I'm on the record. I don't want to pull like a Django Veers like, because I didn't, or a Pomaz, this is broken, this is whatever. Because even with Pomaz, right? That's the same meta that produced the Nines Rainbow deck that I think is literally twice as good. Like that Nines Rainbow deck is obnoxious.
Nines, and see, that's the problem. Ambush doesn't solve Nines, right? Like changing ambush doesn't.
Nines is just a problem.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean.
That's a separate problem.
So now we have at least 2 specific.
It's really.
And there's Maz and then.
Well,
there's always going to be a couple of cases when you're putting on this many cards.
But I'm hopeful we actually get, now that we're basically a year of releases in. I'm hoping we'll get an official FAQ, maybe an errata, maybe. I would take a lot of things.
Well, we just saw Android and Netrunner lay the hammer down, so it seems like the tides of change might be floating around at FFG at this point.
And you definitely, with a collectible game, you want to be careful. Because as an example, if you now do something to Sabine, who you just put out, it's a legendary, and someone just paid $80 to get 2 copies of this card, doing something that makes that not playable is a kind of a problem.
It's a big problem.
But to me, like if I, it's like make a prediction on what you think the best decks are going to be, I think that the only decks that are going to be viable are going to have action cheating in them, which makes me sad, right? And that's everything from Ray to Sabine and Cad to Nines, unless something dramatic changes with him, to Maz. It's like, I do not think there's going to be, and the maybe one exception in the whole game right now is Thrawn Unkar, which is a whole different ball of wax. But
was that the case at Worlds? I mean, which of those top decks, even the Phasma decks were running Tactical Mastery, right?
Sure.
You've got to have. It's like everybody was recognizing the value of a window of non-interaction.
Even the Tusken Raider, right? That's why Vader Raider was good.
It's necessary.
It's even simpler than the window of non-action. It's literally double the amount of actions in a turn.
Yeah,
and it's
pretty significant.
Like with Pomage, you have hit and run. With back at Worlds with. Like the Leia Akbar deck, you had It's a Trap.
Yeah.
And the hit and run, it's like you have these like, and again, where is the boundary of what is acceptable and what's not? And I think the highest value thing in this is those moments where you can potentially put a bunch of dice on the board that can't be mitigated, right? That is obnoxiously powerful.
Man, It's a Trap would still be so great though. Because you get It's a Trap, change all your dice to guns, and then it says, if ambushes now immediately resolve one of your dice. then you can resolve a gun, and then you still have all your guns sitting there, and your opponent has a chance to be like, the trap was, I got one shot off, and now if you don't do anything about it, the whole barrage is coming.
Sure.
Like, it's set.
There's ways around it.
Maybe that's my new thing to really drill on.
Yeah. But I, where I'm looking, it's like, I feel like that it has just gone too far, and it's too consistent, and it's really the biggest in this set in particular. It's like Cad and Sabine. The fact of a single 2-cost gun on either of them could mean 8 damage.
Yeah.
It's like, that's
it's
crazy.
Like slots. Now, aside from those 2 characters, though, that's pretty much the only thing we saw in the set that had anything to do with action cheating, right? I mean, there maybe was one other thing, but I remember looking through all the cards and thinking, how cool. Like, there's no
They're
just
stepping away a little bit.
blatant cheating going on.
And I think that's what, for me, is like kind of the end of this thesis, which is if this pool of cards was different, I think the rest of the cards get way better and way more playable. Because there's a lot of characters that aren't seeing play, or a lot of cards that they're just not quite as good as they could be if this little pocket of stuff wasn't happening.
Yeah. So we might see an even more diverse. I mean, I think that's really the goal, right? You would see an even more diverse situation if you were to tone down the chaining out of actions, because it just limits what is actually viable so heavily.
Yeah.
That's a fine case to make, right? I mean, that's a fine case to make. And it's not to say that anything is... I mean, the draft was incredibly fun.
Yeah, so let's talk about the draft for a minute.
Exciting.
So effectively,
it's old school.
We have a draft format, and this is going to let me ask you guys some fun questions, which is we have a draft format that we made for Destiny Weekend that we've adapted for every set now. And basically the way it goes is everyone gets 6 packs. They open 2 at a time. They put the cards together. You draft that to the left, do it again, to the right, do it again, to the left. And you build your deck out of that. There's no hero, villain, restrictions. You can run 1 copy of any of the 9 uniques from that set. And then we usually pick 4 dice from the set that you can just add to your deck to give some consistency.
Usually like a melee upgrade, a gun upgrade, maybe a general upgrade, and then a resource upgrade. Yeah.
So we did that today. You guys drafted Empire at War for the first time. What do you guys think? What are your feelings on Empire at War?
I thought it was great.
I thought it was really great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't know that are supports seeing constructed play?
Oh, yeah.
Because they're definitely seeing draft play.
That's what I was going to say. I really like the vehicles. I really like the supports. I didn't draft any of them. But then
you just drafted
back
Mace
to the cards,
Thrawn.
Yeah, Mace Thrawn. Not that great of an idea, by the way. It looked good on paper. Actually, probably didn't look good on paper. I just saw these 2 guys.
The idea's cool.
That makes 30. That'll work. It did not work.
I also love how the removal is functioning in this set, because it's all wonky. I mean, I didn't have any straight up just like, this is a get out of jail free card. It was like, if I have a vehicle to spot, I can remove that. I can reroll dice of 2 or higher. Like if I have a die already on the board, I can remove that to reroll some stuff. So I was always having to play into my removal instead of just having a safety button. Yeah. And I thought that was really fun.
It was all having to do with dice on the board or cards on the board, which is really cool, because since that board is constantly changing, you're going to want to maneuver your dice in a way that allows you to do those things. It was really enjoyable. Thrawn was really enjoyable. I felt like Thrawn. Yeah. Just like constantly looking at the deck, and then I had drafted some cards that let me look at my opponent's decks. So I sort of knew what they were getting. Not only that, I knew what their hand was. So if I was like a good player, I would have used that to my advantage. Instead, I was just like,
cool.
Still guessing about every time, yeah.
Thrawn is perhaps, while absurdly good, one of the most thematically designed characters, because if you're good and you can predict what's in your opponent's hand before you see it, you get an advantage because you get to discard a card. And then you get the side benefit, which very much feels like Thrawn, of now knowing what your opponent's capable of.
Yep.
So it's a twofold thing.
And if you have, I could have definitely, if I would have been playing this better, seen what my board was, known what your likely response was to it, given the cards that I saw in your hand, and then whenever I roll Thrawn in, guess the card, guess the number, the cost of the card that I know will dismantle your plans. Yeah. I think that's so cool.
He's a different kind of player. I love the Jedi Apprentice. That's the first time that one of these, off
teacher.
Till I thought it was Apprentice. Is it not Apprentice? It's the most beautiful art.
It's that gorgeous.
Is it in there? No, I don't see it. I don't see it. It's seriously, the art is everything that Jedis should be about.
Jedi instructor.
Jedi instructor. Thank you. It's perfect. It's beautiful. We finally figured out that things need like a decent amount of hit points to do anything. So like 9 hit points on that character is incredible.
In the current day and age of Destiny, unbelievably necessary.
And the die sides, it's all basically all the different icons, and then you can flip another character to whatever you roll. Just all throughout the draft, I felt like that was so thematic, and it was like this Jedi instructor is teaching the rebel, war start in the game, how to shoot his gun all of a sudden, right? And it's just like, oh, that's cool.
That's
I'm
very
just showing you. And then I'm like, I'm teaching you how to focus, servant of the dark side, like those kinds of things. So I love that. I always love the kind of like third string, entities in Star Wars, and it was actually playable.
The old Gamorrean Guard, I think, is great.
So strong. And that thematic card where if you have multiple titles, you can remove die. It's just perfect. Yeah. Really, that is really killer.
Pay spot two characters with the same name to remove 2 dice.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's just perfect, right? And it has them on the front. It has them on the art.
He had Mace Windu.
Yeah,
who can be a baller.
Yeah, he can get 4 damage with 1 resource, and I've got Thrawn, which you're likely to get a turn your die to any side, but your die has to stay on the board.
Yeah.
So every time you get 2 or 4 damage, I just Gamorrean Guard, soak that damage.
Just run right in front of lightsaber.
It was just like, oh
so
no.
Good.
And then I played Impersonate, which lets me move damage however I want. I had already killed Mace, so you weren't likely to kill anything anyway. But the guard went from 1 health left, and then I moved to divide the damage equally among my characters.
So
it was just hilarious.
It seems like a set. I don't know that they build. I doubt that they build them for draft. I know that is a consideration with games like Magic, like actually how this is going to work in a sealed and draft format. So make sure you have the right ratio of removal cards and that kind of stuff. But it definitely feels like a balanced drafting experience. There's a lot of directions to go. There's a lot of opportunity to, innovate on what this card is capable of in a limited format. For instance, that 2 cost, your opponent gets to change all their damage sides, and then you get to change to all damage sides.
Oh, yeah. Heat of battle?
Goodness. So I had that 4 character deck, and I just, piddle around for a while. And then by the time my opponent had rolled all their dice and done all their stuff, I just play that one. And then it's like, here's 10 damage, 8 damage in draft. It's like,
and it's like, if they don't have any dice on the board to change, obviously it's pretty okay.
It's really good.
Which is cool. Red has that theme, kind of, Red Hero at least, because they have It's a Trap, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, they're both, if you have dice showing damage, I can penalize you. And if you don't have dice, I can also penalize you now.
do it, yeah.
So some cool stuff happening.
Yeah.
So one thing, Zach and I got to talking after our game, and just talking about if you guys do end up doing this draft format or any sort of draft format, I think one of the real good ways when you're first starting out to look at what you're drafting, and especially what characters you're drafting, is what's your maximum damage potential on a roll-in. So even though I had Thrawn and Mace, right, most I could do is 4. Which is not that great. Whereas Steven, who has a bunch of little low-cost characters, can do a great amount more.
Yeah, I think it was probably like 8.
It was 8, yeah.
So if I would have been thinking sort of in that direction, I think I would have made a lot better choices. So that's just something heads up. It really helped me to rethink that looking back at it.
And it ties into the, how many bodies you have on the table. Because you only had 2 characters.
So maximum hit points plus maximum damage.
And once I got rid of Mace, right, halfway in, and you're down
it's just a run. Yeah, it's just a discard run at that point.
Yeah, and you got close. You got down to 3. It was super close.
Well, yeah, I thought that was really good because I didn't exactly know what to do coming in, but that was it. Yeah.
Also, Chance Cube is just perfect.
Yeah, it's nice.
I mean, that's one of the cards that we let people just bring in.
I wrecked it with that Chance Cube today.
Yeah, our first game, he's like, Chance Cube, he paid 1. Got the 2 money.
Just what I needed to pay the 3
then
cost.
Paid the 3 cost upgrade.
Mortar rifle or whatever that thing is.
Rolled in. Next turn, Chance Cubes again. Got the 3 this time.
Ooh, money.
Triggered it out. Played another 3 cost upgrade.
3 cost like Vibro X.
And he had because you can run one of any of the 9 uniques, so you had the Instructor and the Dark Acolyte or whatever. And so you put the thing on the Instructor because you knew if you kill the Instructor, you can move that to the Dark Acolyte because of the ability trigger. And it's just like,
and I don't
have a way out of this.
I drafted 2 Funeral Pyres and 2 Bestows. So, like when I was playing against Robert, I rolled that Jedi Instructor out, did all that stuff, bestowed I think it was a Vibro Axe or something, over to the Dark Acolyte, then rolled him out. So got an extra 3 or 4 damage from that weapon just being used twice. So there's some really cool plays that you can do. Bestow, do a thing, bestow it over here, do it again. There's just some opportunity with this set in a limited format that's awesome, and maybe in a constructed format too. But I do, I consistently worry about when these cards get into the pool, and you have all, we're talking about the action chaining and whatnot, those kinds of plays are just less available or doable, exciting, right?
The less those, important dice, and that's what even on the Sabine or CAD that have the 2s and 3s, even if you only roll a 3, they're not going to leave it on the table.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's part of the it controls less consistent right now. So the games are pretty fast. And I think that's where the game's at. It's like you're saying, the health on the characters is very important. And like early on, the health was 7 on non-uniques or 8. And so even Ray at 10, it's like she goes away quick.
Yeah.
Like it happens quick. And so most of my games are 3 turns. A longer game is 5, and that's kind of used to be the middle.
Yeah.
It was like 5 or 6 turns was like a normal
I'd like
game.
to get it back to that.
I would very much like to see a 5-turn game. And right now it's just, even like I at Worlds had light upgrades, heavy control, because it was more that kind of a game.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like I'm questioning control at all.
Which is great. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a meta-defining shift. And I wonder, I mean, there are players, there are going to be players that like that kind of experience, and then there's probably going to be players that just play limited. And that has always existed in the grand scheme. Like if I like Destiny in its, standard form, in its basic foundational level, rather than trying to take constructed there, which is very difficult, it's like, well, just play draft. Mm-hmm. Why? So maybe that's just my format, and maybe that's our format, and then constructed is just a whole new jungle that I'm not even willing to play.
A wild field.
I would play draft over constructed at Worlds every day, though.
Yeah.
Every time.
I'm hopeful. Well, I'll just ask the next question because I'll mention this in my thing, which is, I feel like Destiny is stabilized, the supply is stabilized, the new set's out, the cards keep getting better, and they kind of are understanding.
Is there big stuff coming next set? Is that a different thing, or
we haven't heard about
we haven't
that.
heard about rotation yet, have we?
Not officially.
There were rumors bouncing around, but
There's always rumors.
We know the next set is a core set. So it's supposed to have starters, and it's we'll keep this in print for a year.
Oh yeah, and they'll print it throughout the year. So
but
that could be a big change.
Speaking of all this, I to kind of finish this conversation, what is it in the next year, even the next 30 episodes of the cast, next 3 cycles, or the next 3 sets, the next year of time? What would you like to see happen with or in Destiny?
Mm-hmm. Good question.
We're gonna have regionals. We're gonna have a world championship.
Yeah.
We're gonna probably have at least 2 more sets. We're gonna have another Star Wars movie that comes out.
Wow. It's a good time to be a Star Wars fan.
It is a good time.
What would I mean, in a perfect world for me, and this is what I mean, it might not be practical or realistic and might not even be liked by the majority of people, but I would like to see something done about the ambush keyword. Now that we've discussed it, I think that's actually a good place to start looking. And just generally slowing the game down a little bit, giving more opportunity for interaction, really holding the action sacred. And I think that development should go in the direction of creative removal, damage, etc., like it did in Empire at War, as opposed to just constantly speeding the game up and trying to, I just don't like combos. I've never liked combos of stuff. It's just like, it doesn't, to me, even in fighting games, it makes no sense to me that like, if you input a certain button combination, like you win the match. Mm-hmm. Like that's not, why would you ever do that? It doesn't make any sense to me. Never has. It's just like, if I draw these 3 cards in the same hand, woo.
Well, for you, I think.
But why?
Part of the fun of a game is the adapting.
Mm-hmm. So, you're absolutely right.
So a combo you can't adapt to because you're getting pounded.
Yeah. Right.
But
that's the pre-planning.
If the skill is in, with every punch, adapting your maneuvers at every turn. That's why I like Destiny so much up front, was the skill was in both adapting and predicting the ways in which you're going to need to adapt and leveraging that to your advantage. But
and the adaptability, you get a maximum adaptability when you have a maximum number of actions exchanged. So I like that a lot. So I'd like to see that. I'd also like to see some of these iconic characters that we don't have yet.
Like Yoda?
Yeah. Yoda's a big one. Boba Fett still not made an appearance.
We didn't get Zeb of all the Rebels characters for some reason.
We haven't seen Zeb. There's a couple of bounty hunters we still don't even have, right? The guy, the helmet.
We haven't got Zuckuss or not IG.
We got IG.
Forlom.
Oh,
how we got Forlom.
That's going to be a set there. Yeah. So I'd like to see all of that. And then what else? It gets tough because this game is relatively restrictive when it comes to, dare I say the word, design space.
We avoided it all last podcast.
I mean, your maximum cost is like 5. Your character costs can only go so far in different. Your character dice can only go so far in different.
But
so what can we do?
There's a few things I think could be done.
Here we go.
Someone's thought about this.
Yeah,
tee it up.
Which is, we haven't seen any new icon types on dice.
Yep.
So, there could be an icon for drawing cards.
Yeah,
That's
a short putt. Obviously,
there could be an icon for a lot of things. The special icon is a cool icon because it lets you kind of do anything on a die. We could have other card types. We could have as an example, they have the neutral on all the battlefields. You could have battlefields that are hero villain. You could have battlefields that cost points.
You could have battlefields that can only be run if you have certain characters. There it is.
You could have like in Thrones, you had agendas where it's like you could have a 2-point thing that you start the game with that affects how you play or what you do.
That you have a 2-cost thing that like buffs all stormtroopers, like Imperial Discipline kind of a thing, and now all of a sudden you're 28.
That's what. So Palpatine Elite was 28 points.
Yeah.
For some reason, there's 2 points there.
Yeah.
It could be an upgrade that you start the game with, but it costs 2 points.
Yeah,
or it costs 5 points.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. That's just like off the top of my head.
I want to see rotation. I want to see what's going to happen. When are we going to rotate? What's the format going to look like? Is it going to be a legacy format? Are we going to have a standard, a draft, a sealed? Like, I need some details.
I need some information.
Yeah, I would love to know more about rotation.
I was going to say, what about you?
I would love to see a super aggressive rotation. I think the idea, not from a monetary standpoint, but from a deck building standpoint, of which I am most excited about, especially like the newness of things, to just trash it all and bring back a whole new 3 or 4 sets. I would like to see that. I'd like to see what that does, and then I'd like to see a legacy format as well, where it can just be Crazy Town, and you don't have to worry about balancing it per se. I would also really like to see some more and interesting battlefields. I think they're just beginning to sort of understand how far you can push those. I think we're going to see a lot of really interesting stuff come out of that.
Well, I think even maybe a better way of saying that is they're beginning to show the ways. Because I assume they were making this set a while back.
Fair enough, yeah.
But they even have the battlefields where it's like, there's one that's while you control it, your cards
that's the one I'm
with
talking
3
about.
cost or more have ambush. While you control it, when you activate a support, you can reroll it.
Yeah.
And so you could have battlefields that are, that's the first thing. It's like while you control it, okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what about while you don't control it?
Yeah.
You can go as far as you want with that. So I'm curious to see where they go with the game over the next 3 sets. Get those characters like you're talking about. The thing I was going to mention earlier is I would love to see an official draft or sealed format with a world championship, with a
necessary
support system for that.
Because
I do think, as we played earlier in the draft, it takes it back to the basics. It is action. You see characters you wouldn't see. You see things paired together you wouldn't see. You kind of have to use control cards you wouldn't normally pick, or battlefields you wouldn't normally pick. And so I would just love to see that support. I also think that's a great way for new players to get in. At any point, you can play a draft with very little cards. So that's the thing. If I could pick one thing, that's what I would see.
I would love to see that by Worlds, even if it's unofficial. I'm down for a draft pretty much anytime.
Anytime. What are you doing right now?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to questions. We will touch base with Destiny in the future if we need to. Hashtag Ask Covenant.
We'll definitely touch base with Destiny.
Hashtag Ask Covenant. You ask us questions. We'll answer them right here on the show. We're going to hit a couple. First is Michael Harris on YouTube. What are your impressions of Steamforged Games doing a public beta testing for Guild Ball and asking their player base's opinion? Is it helpful for the players to have direct input in the upkeep of the game for all those decisions, or would you rather them be made behind closed doors?
Fantastic. What is it? Pitch? What's it called? Pitch something?
Gosh,
standard pitch or their pitch formations.
Pitch formation is what it is. Yeah.
So what Guild Ball is doing is they are taking the first turn of the game of Guild Ball and essentially trying to eliminate it to save time. Because one of the main things that at least they said in their announcements, is that they're looking to save time because they know that it takes a while to play these games and people are always strapped for time, right? That's a standard issue. So it's basically you start, whereas you normally kind of deployed on your back line, you start deploying stuff midfield and whatnot. There's rules for the kicker and the receiver and how you deploy. But what they did is they announced these rules of format, and they said, we would love it if everybody out there would test this, let us know your thoughts, come to the forum. We have a thread for it dedicated to it. And they got a massive response. Everybody participated and did it and ran these formats and ran these events and gave feedback, and they changed a bunch, and they've constantly been updating the rules as this beta test essentially has gone on. So I think this is nothing but good for the game, right? You get a format that is guaranteed to be liked by the player base because they actually have their hands in it. You don't have to take feedback that you don't like as a designer, so you still have control of your game. and everybody gets excited about being more a part of the community and the foundation of the game itself, and kind of gets people more diehard into Guild Ball. Feel a part of
engaging
the
with a thing that's been honed so well.
Yeah,
and I think that's really important.
So it obviously is better than if somebody just came up with it and implemented it. Their original version has changed tremendously, so it works for Guild Ball in this instance. However, it's quite different than if they were, for instance, with Destiny, trying to open beta the next set, right? The reason that it's different is you've got a 6-month lead time on a Destiny set. So we would be seeing the set essentially a year from now if it was being tested today, which is very weird. Like, can you maintain excitement in a game where everybody knows all the cards a year before they come out? Even if you have it exclusive to X, Y, or Z, there's always leaks. There's always going to be that. You could put it out on Tabletop Simulator. You've talked about that, Jonathan, pretty often. Like, put it out on TTS and then let just the internet world have at it for a while. Maybe you don't even have art on the cards.
Because you can iterate so quickly on TTS.
And you can upload a new patch every week and change the cards.
I feel like this points at in general, community involvement is a good thing for a game, and I think it's helpful. But to me, there's careful considerations, like how involved is the community, how much, because I think original L5R ran into this a lot, which is players felt very in control and maybe too in control of that experience. But the thing for me, and the reason it works with Guild Ball, is that once a year they reset, right? New rules, new cards.
It is just a format. It's just a format. It's not even units.
But they have the capacity, even with units, to get feedback and implement changes every year.
Yeah.
Versus something like Destiny, you print it and it's done. And so, to me, I think a very interesting future for some tabletop games, like I picture X-Wing, where if you could get feedback, now that you've seen it, right? Jumpmaster's too good. Like, flat out. So instead of having to do errata and FAQ, it's like if you do have natural resets built in where you can implement feedback and you can
just get the Infinity route, right?
That's a really helpful system.
Have it all online, which you can't do for cards. It's a lot more tedious, at least, to do it for cards.
But ways of integrating that, right?
Yeah.
Like even in Destiny, like if the point cost of the characters wasn't on the characters and you had to like go online and see what it was, and it's like, oh, Rey's too good, 15 points.
Yeah.
50% increase. Like you can still play her. She's still a card you can use. The only thing that's changed is this one.
Yeah, there are ways to do it like that.
There's ways to implement that. Let me drop this on you guys.
All right.
What if I told you that every game is basically an open beta? It's just one calls it that and one doesn't. Because, I mean, as we see with Empire at War, they're taking changes that they have realized, ambush, health of characters, and they are integrating it into the new sets. So really all that Guild Ball is doing is letting people have sort of a free pass at it. Again, it's impossible to do in the current format in really any of the LCGs. But I think it's worth noting that the community is always going to have their opinions, and it's mostly and those opinions, because of the very nature of things, are going to affect the design in the future. So that's something to look at. The second thing I want to tell is a quick story, which is from a design standpoint, which I find myself on, not a game design, but as a designer. One of the things I used to do, this had a large impact on me, is whenever I would draw something in my art class back in the day, I would look at it, and if I couldn't tell if it was good or not, I would take it and I would hold it and I would look at it in a mirror. And that alone allowed me to have a different perspective on it, because you can get too close to this stuff, 100%. And you can, even if you have a small or even relatively large beta team, they can be too close to it. So it's really nice to have a range of opinions. It's also an art form to decide which opinions to take and which not to take. And that is what you have to start concentrating on when you do put more of your resources into these beta tests.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, next question. And this is just a bizarre happening, which is from Falcon Ash K on a YouTube video from 2009.
The only comment.
A couple hundred views. I mean, we live in a wildly awesome world in which there's 10 years of Covenant videos on our YouTube channel that you can go look at any time. And if you go
this
do
is
that,
going to make some people go and look at those archives.
Everybody needs to go. In fact, I would love it if those of you that do end up going and watching this Arcane Legion video on our YouTube channel would comment on it, so that I at least know that people have actually gone and looked at it, because it is so funny just to see the reality of what that was,
that was
where
our
we were.
First Gen Con or our second Gen Con?
That was our first. That's crazy.
That's the first one I brought my camera
That
to?
was the first Gen Con that we went to as like an
company,
entity.
yeah.
And you brought your cameras because we were going to film some Monster Apocalypse finals, and then we ended up just.
Was it a camcorder at that time?
Yeah, it was a Canon. It was prosumer, as much as I hate that word, but it was what I was using for my freelance work at the time. Worked on many DVDs, and like the files were gigabytes. Giant.
That's so funny because like right now you could literally just shoot with a base level phone and it would look 1,000 times better. Isn't that nuts?
So, and the crazy thing, sorry to cut you off. The crazy thing is, if you look at those videos, you can see a lot of those proto ideas starting out that have been fleshed out. I mean, even in the Monster Apocalypse gameplay videos, there are HUDs and there is commentary.
Very basic,
but the ideas are there.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the question.
And that brings us to the question, which is, he asked on this Arcane Legion video from 2009, did Zach know back in 2009 how strong TC would be today?
And that's very kind of you to say, first of all, that we're strong at all.
That you're implying that we're strong, yes. Insane. Really, it's not. I mean, I don't think
you know?
I don't think it's just to me. There's no way I knew. That's impossible. There was hope.
You hoped.
But even what Team Covenant is now becomes clearer by the day. And I think it's a process we worked very hard over the past decade to figure out. Yeah. And I would be curious how much different is what Team Covenant is now different than what you thought it would be in 2009? Because at the time, right, Steven's in college. Not done with school yet. I'm in college, and I'm shipping stuff out of my dorm room at this moment. Actually, I'm at Gen Con, but the next week I'm going. I was missing my first week of school.
Yep.
And then I was going back to college to ship this stuff. And then you were working freelance. I think
I was working at a news station.
Yep. And coming with us on this wild journey for the first time.
Yeah.
What really changed for you?
What changed? Really,
just most significantly. What's most surprising?
Let me put it this way: I have always, which is why I'm here, I've always very much believed in the potential of Covenant as it's hit its various iterations across the way. So I knew, or I certainly had hoped that all the elements were there. In which case, that we could really affect change. What I didn't know is how that change would actually happen and what that potential would be shaped into, and how, what is this, 10 years later? 10 years later, we would still be shaping it. I had no concept of what business was, honestly, if you want to get right down to it. Yeah. So I couldn't make correct choices. But I would say, I knew there was potential. I knew there was a lot of potential. I knew that we were all passionate about it. I knew that we all had a pretty good vision of where we wanted to go, and that vision is still one of the core guiding principles. But there was no way that I could predict the journey to get us to where we are today, and the journey, likewise, into the future. It's the same thing.
There was certainly a lot more interest in the sportscast element of gaming at that time. But also, if you think about it, you were standing there interviewing a game designer / producer about what their game was and why it's interesting. And we did that at Gen Con this year.
Yeah.
So.
A lot's changed and not a lot has changed.
Probably the first bunch of videos we did is a tutorial, which we do still. We've honed it and gotten better. Interviews with game designers, which we still do, which we've gotten better. Gameplay videos with commentary, which we still do, and we've gotten better. But it's the getting better that's the exciting part. It's the seeing those ideas really take shape and become, mastered in some ways, but become efficient and become consistent and become just things that people, or that we can be really proud of. And not only that, very helpful,
way more helpful than they used to be.
Way more helpful than they used to be. And then to take that, and I love doing this, to extrapolate that on into the next 10 years and seeing what the stuff will look like then. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm also excited to see. Well, one thing we like to do is we like to ask you questions, listening and watching. And the question this week is, I originally had something else, now I'm going to change it.
Enunciate this.
I'm going to enunciate.
No, this is a great question. What are you changing it to?
I'm going to consider changing it.
Oh my gosh!
But I want to know the answer. Someone's doing it live here.
Well, we'll do it live.
No, the question that we'd love to have you answer in the comments is, what do you hope to see out of Team Covenant in the next 10 years?
Oh, I like that one.
Until next time, keep playing.